What's going on, noobs? I'm the Perpetual Noob, and welcome back to what I'm currently workshopping as the title as my first win boss video series. This is the second video in the series about the Hollow Knight Silksong bosses, and today we are going to be talking about the second boss that I encountered, and also the boss that it ends up being one of the goodest good puppers ever in Farloom, the Bellbeast. I found the Bellbeast in the Marrow, which is like the second major area we get to, and I was only able to access the Bellbeast fight, or the Bellbeast themselves, once I got the Silk Spear ability. And the Silk Spear ability grants us the ability to throw our needle across the screen, but it takes silk. It does do extra damage, but again, it takes silk, and at this point in the game, it takes half of the silk I had. That's going to be relevant in a moment. So once we free the Bellbeast from the silk, well, they're just so excited to finally be free that they decide to get a very powerful case of the zoomies. Yeah, everything the Bellbeast does double damage, and Hornet, at least at this point in the game for me, had only 5 health, so double damage goes through her health real fast. Way faster than I was ready for, and I certainly did not expect the Bellbeast, the second boss that I have encountered, mind you, in this game, to be doing double damage. That was a shock. So it actually took 4 attempts to get through the Bellbeast because, yeah, again, double damage, real quick to die. So the Bellbeast plays like an advanced version of the massive Moss Charger from Hollow Knight, in that the Bellbeast does come up from the ground. Thankfully, that is telegraphed by a whole lot of dust appearing where the Bellbeast is going to be popping out of the ground from. But they have their dash attack where they'll go run across the arena, and then they also have their leap attack where they will, well, leap across the arena. It did take a little bit to figure out what the telegraphs were for each of those attacks, whereas the dash attack, they're just going to stay on the ground as soon as they pop up. The leap attack, they're going to kind of just launch straight out of the ground and just jump. I did find that for the dash attack, what was working for me was to use the dive kick again to, dodge the attack, but also then to kind of chase the Bellbeast down. I'd hit them, and then I'd flip in the air, and then I'd chase after them by changing the direction of the dive kick and hit them again. Eventually, it took a little bit of time to get that timing to work. And then with the leap attack, I eventually figured out I've just got to stay on the ground and slowly walk to catch up to them after they bonk their poor little nose into the wall. Oh, these puppers is going way too fast for themselves, and it's like they're like you see, a little puppy that's running along a kitchen floor and they have no grip and they kind of slide into the fridge or something. I called an advanced massive Moss Charger because there's essentially one more actual attack, and then there's a state of the battle afterwards, or a state in a second phase. There's a second phase of this fight, and it took me a little while to recognize that because initially, I think it was my second or third attempt, the Bellbeast did a shout and a whole bunch of bells fell from the ceiling. Okay, in my head I said, well, that's a phase shift. All right, we're now in phase 2 of the fight. But then in the next attempt, the Bellbeast did a third unique attack before we ever got to the shout. And the third unique attack is, I don't know, we'll just call it the pop-up attack for now. I'll come up with better names later. Once I've got a script and I've taken the time to study all of this, we'll have a better name. How about you leave suggestions for names for attacks in the comments below? Look at that! Engagement! Woo! But the Bellbeast did this attack where they popped out of the ground, and it launches 2 bells that pop out of the ground and then roll in each direction across the arena. But it did that before the shout, which made me think, oh, So the shout that I saw in the previous fight, well, that just unlocked more to the fight. And then I think it was in the final attempt, the final victorious attempt, that I recognized, oh, okay, no, the shout is a phase shift. They just can do these bell attacks as well before the phase shift. So, yeah, so the Bellbeast has at least 3, like, completely distinct attacks. The dash, the leap, the pop-up where they launch the bells. And then when we get into phase 2 of the fight, that's when bells will fall from the ceiling during all of the attacks. When the Bellbeast does their leap or their dash or their pop-up, at least one bell will fall from the ceiling and do a single bounce in addition to everything else that the other attacks are doing. Which did cause some messy dodging situations in some later attempts, as like a bell would be bouncing, but then there'd be a bell rolling on the floor. It was very Watcher Knights from Hollow Knight, if you've experienced that fight. Oh, and the bells do double damage as well, because again, the Bellbeast is just very, very, very excited to finally be free of the spider silk. So everything was doing double damage. And it did take me a couple of instances of taking damage to recognize that the bells from the pop-up attack were, 1, rolling across the floor. Like, I apparently kind of lost track of that early on. And 2, I cannot affect the bells in that attack. I can't bonk them with my needle or do anything with them. But thankfully, the bells that fall from the ceiling, I can knock those away with a needle attack, so that I could maybe keep myself safe. Now remember how I mentioned we got a new ability, and that was the Silk Spear, and that allowed us to free the Bellbeast and actually get into this fight in the first place. Well, of course, it was a new ability, and I saw that it, was supposed to do more damage, and that it would, attack across the screen. And I thought, well, the Bellbeast is very long, so, that makes sense. Let me try to make the Silk Spear work. That was not the play for me. The Silk Spear, maybe it does do a lot of damage, but I did not figure out how to make it work without getting hit myself, and so I ended up needing Silk way more for healing and less for trying to do damage. So the strategy that worked for me was actually being much more methodical, or at least slower with my attacks. I found that okay, maybe I can get a couple of hits here during the dash. I can get a couple of hits here during the leap. And then the rest of the fight was dodging and just trying to stay safe because, double damage. Again, I could not take too many hits before the fight would be over, and so I ended up playing very, very safe. Through that, though, I did learn that, okay, there is a good amount of time to heal in between attacks, so that was very helpful. And that's essentially how I won the fight. That was how my first victory came about, was that I got in a couple of dive kicks during the dash attacks. I'd get a couple of hits in after a leap. I would maybe get some hits in during the pop-up attack, maybe, if I was feeling a little bit brave and wanting to, and feeling good about dodging the bells. Otherwise, it was just kind of a lather, rinse, repeat of getting the damage in on just those 2 attacks where I could, or where I felt safe enough to do so. And then that allowed me to get through the Bellbeast fight. So that's I think that's everything. As you can see, staying off, not having a script is kind of still very, very foreign and very novel for me, especially for content like this. Thank you all so much for being here. Please let me know in the comments below what you think the attack name should be. How did your first win against the Bellbeast go? How are you feeling about Hollow Knight Silksong up until this point? I am the Perpetual Noob, and I will see you all next time.